It was a strange day. My normally reclusive husband had stepped outside, and the doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I answered, my mother-in-law stood before me with a cold, harsh expression. Honestly, you should answer the door as soon as the bell rings. You're proving to be quite an ineffective wife, incapable of even the simplest tasks. I'm sorry, I was working and didn't hear it, I replied, trying to keep my composure. You're lying again, she snapped. I know your excuses. You say you're working, but you're just wasting your time. You can't even manage the house, and now you're pretending to be busy. That's not true, I countered, my voice firm. You don't have to believe me, but the truth remains the same. With a disdainful smile, my mother-in-law waved a piece of paper in front of me. Do you know what this is? She asked, her voice laced with smug satisfaction. I swallowed, feeling a knot form in my stomach. What is it? These are divorce papers, she said, her smile growing wider. My son has already signed them. He doesn't want you anymore. Now, sign here and leave. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the paper in disbelief, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. My hand shook as I reached for the pen, signing without a word. My mother-in-law's triumphant laugh echoed in my ears as I watched her relish the moment, oblivious to the emotional turmoil brewing inside me. I'm Samantha. I work as a freelance writer and editor from home. A few years ago, I had a steady job at a publishing company, and the experience I gained there has allowed me to maintain a stable income ever since. Though freelancing has its ups and downs, I've managed to build a comfortable life thanks to the savings I accumulated during my corporate days. I met Kevin while I was working at the publishing company. At the time, I was still new to editing, and Kevin was an aspiring writer. We both faced many challenges, but his dedication to his craft inspired me. Even when success seemed out of reach, he never gave up. We dated for several years before getting married. When I left my corporate job to pursue freelancing, our early days together were filled with hope. Though I wasn't yet stable as a freelancer and Kevin was still chasing his writing dream, we supported each other. We split household chores and finances equally, living in harmony. As my freelance career started to gain traction, Kevin began portraying himself as a successful writer to his parents. But the truth was far from that. Despite his relentless efforts, he faced constant rejections from publishers. He'd never made it past the second round of selections for any writing opportunity. I knew he wanted to spare his parents the worry, so I kept quiet, playing along with his version of events when we visited his family. In the beginning, it was easy, just smile and nod. But as Kevin continued to insist he was thriving, I began to feel increasingly uncomfortable during these visits. Not only did his parents fully believe his stories, but they also started to view me as a lazy, dependent wife, someone who didn't contribute anything to the household. They couldn't grasp the concept of freelancing. Working from home was foreign to them, and over time, their attitudes became more dismissive. Whenever I visited, they would question me, accusing me of being a non-contributing spouse. How can you face your husband's family when you do nothing all day? They would ask. I'm a freelancer, I work from home, I'd explain. Kevin and I share the household duties, and I contribute to the finances just as he does. They would retort that I wasn't pulling my weight, that Kevin was supporting me, and that I should be more grateful. They warned that if I didn't shape up, Kevin might decide to leave me. Despite their criticism, I knew the truth about our relationship. I knew how we supported each other, emotionally and financially, and no amount of judgment from his family would shake my resolve. The conversation with my in-laws had become a broken record. If Kevin leaves you, how will you support yourself? I almost let out a frustrated sigh, but I held it in. They had no idea. I was the one paying most of our living expenses and managing the household chores. Yet they continued to believe the opposite. It was Kevin who wasn't contributing. He was unemployed and barely helping at home, but I kept that to myself. At first, their jabs were limited to when Kevin wasn't around, but things had escalated recently. During a dinner at his parents' house, Kevin and I arrived together, only to find that they had prepared a meal, just for him. No plate for me. It had become a regular occurrence, this subtle exclusion, and it didn't stop there. They were starting to spread rumors about me to the rest of the family. At the rare family gatherings we attended, I could always hear the whispers behind my back. Though their attitude didn't hurt me as much as it once did, my frustration with Kevin was growing. He simply sat there, silent, letting it all happen. It was infuriating. On top of that, my in-laws, under the false impression that Kevin was a successful writer, began expecting him to buy them things. To maintain the image they had of him, Kevin complied with their requests, and as a result, I found myself unknowingly spending nearly $22,000 a month on them, money that came directly from my own savings. Kevin would withdraw money from my bank account without asking. At first, I overlooked the smaller amounts, but as the costs added up, I couldn't ignore it anymore. One day, I finally confronted him. Please, don't spend my money without asking me first. His response was nothing short of infuriating. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. You work from home, so your job's easy, right? You just play around and make money, he said, a mocking tone in his voice. Since it's so simple for you to earn money, why not spend a little on my mom? Don't be so stingy. My jaw dropped. Kevin, is that how you see my job? He shrugged. Yeah, I think it's easy. You get paid to stay at home every day. I couldn't believe my ears. He actually thought so little of my work. As he walked away, chuckling, I felt a weight settle over me. I had reached my breaking point. This was it. I could no longer tolerate his disregard for me and my contributions. The man I once believed in was gone, replaced by someone who mocked my hard work. Kevin wasn't working on his manuscript as he claimed. Instead, he was spending hours playing computer games. When we first met, Kevin had been serious about his writing. He was passionate, determined to create something great. That Kevin was long gone. With a heavy heart, I began searching for an apartment, one that would be just for me. Quietly, I began packing away my things, preparing for the moment I would finally leave. I found a small place that felt right and went to visit it, confirming it would be my new home. One day, while Kevin was out, my mother-in-law showed up at the house. She rang the intercom with an urgency that felt intrusive. As soon as I opened the door, my mother-in-law marched in and settled herself onto the sofa as if she owned the place. Samantha, it's time for you to leave, she declared, her tone leaving no room for argument. Leave? What are you talking about? I asked, taken aback by her bluntness. I've been telling you for ages that you don't work, you don't help with the house, and you're nothing more than a useless wife, she said, her voice sharp. There's no way Kevin, a successful writer, belongs with someone like you. I tried to speak up, but she cut me off before I could respond. If you move out, I'll come stay here. I'll cook for Kevin every day, and I won't have to deal with his grandmother. She's impossible to live with, picky about the food and always complaining about the dust. I can't stand it anymore. I'm moving in, and I'll put her in a nursing home. And how do you plan to pay for that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I'll have Kevin take care of it. He's making plenty of money, so it shouldn't be an issue, she said, as though it were the simplest thing. But you're in the way, so I need you to leave. With that, she shoved a stack of divorce papers in my face. Why do you have those? I asked, stunned. I had him fill them out a while ago, she replied, a smug grin spreading across her face. I told him to divorce you as soon as possible. I glanced at the papers. Indeed, Kevin's handwriting filled the lines. It hit me strangely, relief. Of all things, I had been ready to leave, but I had no idea how the divorce would unfold. I thought Kevin might drag his feet, that he would cling to whatever semblance of our love remained. I had anticipated a long and drawn-out argument, but now, the papers were already filled out, signed by him. It felt like a weight lifted off my chest. I didn't hesitate. I picked up the pen and signed without a second thought. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered, her voice cold and commanding. Now get out, leave everything behind. All of it was bought with Kevin's money, so don't take anything with you. She laughed as she said it, a harsh, cruel laugh. I didn't waste any time. I packed up what little I needed and moved into the apartment I had already found. On my way there, I stopped by the municipal office to officially file the divorce papers, and just like that, my new life began, living alone, in peace, free from the constant judgment and ridicule. It felt liberating. Surprisingly, I found that my work, which had once been interrupted by all the chaos, was now flowing better than ever. Just 5 days into my new life, I was working from home when I received a call from Kevin. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. Please, come home. I frowned, setting my work aside. What now? I'm sorry, he pleaded, his voice strained. Please, come back home. I shook my head, my resolve clear. I'm not coming back. We're divorced now. What? No, that's not valid, he protested. I never agreed to it. Kevin, I said firmly, those divorce papers were in your handwriting. It's a done deal. He tried to backpedal. It was just a threat. I didn't mean it. I never wanted a divorce. I stood my ground. But you still wrote them. A divorce is a divorce. You don't need a wife who plays around all day, does easy work, and doesn't help with the house. You wanted out, and now you have it. You get to live with your family, the one you love so much. What's the problem? His apology was all he could muster. I'm sorry, he repeated, his voice hollow. Then he started explaining his new predicament. My family thinks I'm a successful writer, so they quit their jobs and moved in with me, expecting me to support them. Now they want me to pay for grandma's surgery, and I just don't have that kind of money. I see, I said, finally understanding why Kevin was so desperate for me to come back. So this is why you want me back? Yes, he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. Now that my parents know I've been lying to them, they're furious. They're pressuring me to bring you back, and I'm in a really difficult spot. Please, Samantha, come back. Let's try to live together again. Do you really think I'll just come back after everything that's happened? I asked, incredulous. We're divorced, Kevin. You need to face your real problems. Please, don't say that, he pleaded, sounding pathetic. No matter how many times I told him that we were divorced and that he was now a stranger to me, Kevin refused to accept it. He kept grasping at any thread of hope, trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Finally, in a burst of frustration, he snapped, "Fine, if you're so determined to end it, I'll sign the divorce papers, but you need to take responsibility for my parents' care and alimony. You were supposed to help with that when we were married." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What are you talking about? If you hadn't divorced me, your parents would have ended up in a care facility, and we would have had to pay for it. You pushed for this divorce, Kevin. They found out you lied about me, and now they're angry and hurt. All of this is your doing. I'm not paying alimony. No, I won't pay that, I stated firmly, refusing to take on the responsibility for his mess. I don't know what kind of twisted logic you're using, but when we were married, you called me lazy, worthless. You lied about me, and your parents and relatives believed your lies, blaming me for everything. You never stood up for me. You ridiculed me instead of defending me. If you need money so badly, why don't you go take out a loan from a bank? With those words, I ended the call, not waiting for him to respond. I blocked his number and changed my contact details, cutting off all ties for good. A few months later, I happened to pass by my old in-laws' house. It had been sold and turned into a parking lot. The house that had once been full of so much noise and life now gone, replaced by concrete. As I stood there, a neighbor who had just returned from shopping walked by. She nodded toward the empty lot and said, "Kevin's family had to move into an old apartment. They lost everything because of their financial troubles. I hear their fighting got so bad that it could be heard all over the neighborhood, and even the police were called a few times." She patted my shoulder sympathetically. "You went through a tough time, too," she said before hurrying off. I stood there for a moment, reflecting on the turn of events. Kevin's lies had caught up with him. He had tried to present himself as something he wasn't, but now the truth had been exposed. His fabrications couldn't hold up, and the gap between the reality and the story he had told grew wider with each lie. It was strange to think how our lives had unfolded so differently from the way he had imagined in his writing. His own story had turned into something far more chaotic than any novel he could have written. It was like a plotline gone wrong, one he had failed to predict. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. He had ruined his own life, chasing after hollow dreams and deceiving everyone, including himself. But even in my sympathy, I knew that his downfall was a valuable lesson. Watching his self-destructive behavior had taught me something important: the consequences of lies and how quickly they can spiral out of control. It reminded me that, in the end, the truth always prevails. The idea of building a false identity, no matter how clever or well-intentioned, would always lead to disaster. I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistakes. I would remain true to myself, not letting the weight of false appearances crush me the way it had crushed Kevin. In the end, the truth is far stronger than any lie.